So welcome to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on January the 3rd, 2023. We're going to start with the first item of business, which is roll call.
Deb Hutton here.
Deborah Meyerson here.
Randy Cassidy here.
Cindy Canardi here. Staff present.
John Zodi with the Hand Department.
Christina Finley, Hand Department.
Larry Allen, legal.
All right. Next item of business is reading of the minutes for December 19th of 2022. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I move to approve the minutes of December 19, 2022.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item of business is examination of claims for December 9, 2022 for $402,384.57 and December 23, 2022 for $550,631.09. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll make a motion to approve the examination of claims from December 9th and December 23rd of 2022.
Deb Hutton, I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Next item of business is examination of payroll registers for December 16, 2022 for $35,670.87 and December 30th, 2022 for $35,670.81. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Next item of business is the reports of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
Just briefly, Madam President, excuse me, make sure I'm on here. Happy New Year, Commissioners. Wanted to just briefly mention that, as I've mentioned before, the city is being allocated about $2 million in funding from the American Rescue Plan through the HOME program that HUD administers, and part of that process is the development of an allocation plan for those funds, and we are moving through that process now. I've been getting different community input from the required organizations and things like that. We will have a public hearing on that plan in February at one of these meetings, so we'll get the proper notices prepared and all of that, but that will have to be up for public comment during the first half of March and submitted to HUD by the end of March, and so we'll want to make one of these meetings a public hearing for that. So just wanted to give you a heads up that was coming down the pike for February. So that's it.
Super.
What's that in base? What's those grants able to be used for?
So this $2 million has to be used to serve 4 qualifying and defined populations of those who are at risk of homelessness or who are experiencing homelessness. So sort of homeless as defined by HUD, at risk, fleeing domestic violence or human trafficking, or a member of a population that would have other risk factors that could put them at risk for homelessness. So veterans, as an example, is one of those. So I've been reaching out to the veteran service officer, met with Beacon, just community groups around. There's a list of folks you have to get input from, but I'm trying to go beyond that a little bit. And so those are the folks that the funds have to be used to help in some way or another to reduce the risk.
So we're basically looking at utilizing the existing infrastructure that we have in our community.
Right, and so one of the big pieces of that, as you know, is the Heading Home initiative of South Central Indiana, and through the United Way and Community Foundation. That's kind of the basis for how the plan will come about, just using all the data that's been gathered for that, and then looking at how we can
How we can allocate the resources.
accordingly, and how we want to do that, just to make sure it dovetails with what's already being done in the community, which I think we're sort of leading the charge on this effort with all the support that's been given to that program. We want to make sure we're not reinventing any wheels there. So,
Is it more for tenant-based rental assistance, or is it for other forms of subsidy?
that program is one of the uses. So
Okay.
it can be used for nonprofit capacity building, tenant-based rental assistance, rental housing development. Supportive services.
Okay, so it's pretty broad.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then, because there are 5 categories, then the administration of the program, which the
Okay.
city would use that administration money. So there's a budget, there's actually a template plan, so we're putting that together, and you have to outline a budget for those different categories of what it can be used for, or what you're planning to use it for, and then that goes through a process of approval with HUD.
Is there a match that's required or not?
No, not necessarily with this. So we could create a program, if we were doing a grant program, for instance, for capacity building, we could look at that, but not formally.
Great,
So-
thanks.
And who do we thank for being able to do the hard work to get this money?
The hand department is putting together the plan, and then just getting a lot of input from others, so
Okay.
there'll be lots of people to thank when, when it's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you allocate those kind of resources that make the community a better place.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Get
the plan.
that people in place.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a legal report?
Yeah, just briefly, since this is our first meeting of the year, just to remind commissioners, so you all need to come in and sign a bond and an oath that'll be part of that application. Those are usually handled by our risk department, so somebody should be reaching out to you shortly just to schedule a time at your convenience to come in and sign those. The second is a conflict of interest questionnaire. I believe I've already received Commissioner Hutton's, but everybody else will just have to update their annual conflict of interest questionnaire. So we'll be sending that out for you also just to return to us, just as a friendly reminder. Otherwise, I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, have you already sent them out, or?
I don't believe so. I think I need to check to see. Sometimes there's little tweaks to the conflict of interest questionnaire, so I just want to make sure there's no updates that I've missed.
Okay, so
since
we
I've
should
been-
expect to see that
Expect
from you.
to
It's
see
not
it
something
now.
I should look in my inbox.
That's exactly right. I'll just send it all together actually with a bond scheduling email just to keep it all together for you, so it's kind of compact and easy to navigate. Hopefully,
Yeah,
Perfect.
knock on wood.
appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Is there a treasurer's report?
Mr. Underwood is on.
I believe so.
All right. Moving on, is there a business development update?
Mr. Crowley can't be here this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any specific questions.
Thank you.
We've closed out everything we had for sale.
Not everything that we have for sale technically, but of the 2 things that we had at the end of last year, we were able to close on the kiln, as you all know, and then also on the showers administration building just before the end of the year.
Okay.
So,
That's done, and we closed the property there by Kleindorfer's.
the 306 Kirkwood is not yet closed but they have engaged the title company to get that closed. That's the hand department doing that under the name of the hand department. You're acting in the oversight capacity. That deal is pretty much done. It's more, they're actually literally waiting on notarization of signatures just to make sure that we can move forward with that process.
Okay.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Just a question. Do we need to acknowledge that Sarah's here now?
Sorry that I was a few minutes late.
Sure, that's great, yeah. That's fantastic.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. All right, moving on to new business. First item is election of officers. So, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Cindy Canardi as president.
I'll second
Deb Hutton.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
that. Aye.
And I abstain from voting for myself, so thank you. Moving on to secretary, I believe we also need to address.
We have both vice president and secretary, so
Okay.
whichever order you'd like to take those in. Secretary's fine.
I would like to nominate Deborah Meyerson to retain the title of secretary.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And then lastly, vice president.
I'll nominate Deb Hutton as vice president for the RDC.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Okay. All right, wonderful.
Thank you guys for taking, for serving. Appreciate it.
Moving on, the next item of business is Resolution 23-01, approval of 2023 commission schedule. Are there any questions or comments about that?
Quick question in regards to, just to verify, because there may be some times that one of us may be elsewhere and need to zoom in, what is our requirements, just so it's clear in regards to the number of people that are required to physically be here?
There always has to be basically a quorum that's physically present. So at least 50% of the members have to be physically present, which since there's 5 voting members, there always has to be 3 members, at least 3 members physically present. So that means at any one time, 2 of you could potentially participate electronically. To participate electronically, we need to be able to see and hear you simultaneously. So same with the room, so that you can be observed, just like a regular public meeting. You are able to participate. There are a few exceptions on the types of votes that you're able to participate in. But as far as I know, I don't know that the RDC ever has one of those particular votes where you're not eligible. But if that comes up and it's going to be on the agenda, we'll let you know ahead of time. If you say you're going to be out, I would let you know that you wouldn't be eligible to participate in that particular voting process. For the most part, not for the most part, the other rule is just as individuals, you have to be here for at least 50% of the meetings in a given year, unless there's like an excuse that's in statute, which is they're pretty high barrier excuses in statute to exceed that. And you can't attend any more than 2 consecutive meetings electronically.
Okay, that's why I wanted to hear everything, to make sure that we're following those procedural
And
things.
that's a good question. So just to make sure, I will also, since I need to send out an email to everyone, I also attach our electronic meeting policy, because it's based off the statute that was passed by the General Assembly, but it does have those rules run down. And if you have any questions about it ever, please reach out to me. I'm happy to dive into the lovely wording of that particular policy as it's such. I'll just note, just generally, it's something that a lot of municipalities are hoping that the General Assembly would consider revisiting again, because electronic meetings worked pretty well. We saw actually increased participation in the public. And so we are hoping for somewhat of a loosening of those rules, but no promises. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a budget year in the General Assembly, so it might be a little bit tough. So.
Good deal. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions regarding Resolution 23-01? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I propose to approve Resolution 2301.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one opposed. Resolution passes. Next item is Resolution 23-02, approval of maintenance of property owned by the Redevelopment Commission of the City of Bloomington. Who'd like to speak to this?
I can very briefly. So this is similar. We do this every year just in terms of the property that's owned. This is the same amount as 2022. So an overall global amount of $250,000. The reason why it was raised from 2021 and 2022 and continuing on through this year is just the RDC now owns some of that Hopewell property, which incurs some more maintenance and some other costs. But every other portion of this has largely remained the same, which is to say that anything that's over $5,000 has to be approved by you all, so we'd have to bring that to a meeting. If it's an emergency, we'll do that at the next available meeting, just so that you could ratify those costs and kind of explain it to you. And if there's a utility bill specifically that exceeds $2,500, which would be unusual for any of these properties, then we'll also present that to you at a meeting. Otherwise, we pay that out of we call it the 444 account, because that's how it's numbered in our internal New Hope accounting system. It is the unrestricted account for the RDC. So as opposed to TIF funds, which have significant restrictions on them, there are funds that can be used for maintenance, which is what that 444 account contains, and that's why we use that specifically for maintenance. So if there is like a tune-up to an HVAC system or something like that, that's what we use this for.
Sarah?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, since this is a version of a resolution that happens every year, and you said that there was an increase in you said that it increased the 250.
2 years ago,
2
we
years ago.
increased it just as we obtained more
Okay.
property. I'm sorry.
And so I just wanted to just ask, like, how frequently do you reach that maximum threshold versus how much is there a cushion in that account?
We try to
historically?
leave a little bit of a cushion. Obviously, if we get close to that maximum, we're going to come to you and kind of explain what's going on. What had happened a couple years before is we actually realized that we were pretty significantly exceeding it. So that was having to be approved on a case-by-case basis. So that's why we increased it a couple of years ago to just account for all the additional property. And in an event that the RDC owns less property, then I think we could walk it back and kind of marry it to what the numbers are. I didn't pull the specific numbers for 2022 to give you a good comparison, but if you'd like to do that, if you'd like me to do that, I'm happy to give that presentation.
I'm just mostly curious, but I also realize that I don't have a list of all of the property that the RDC owns. So is there a way that we could just have that list as a?
Yes, of
member?
course.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. That was one of the questions I was going to ask. It's like, if we could have a list of what we actually own, or, because there's those, as we had talked previously at times about the BMFC and such, and how that consolidated over, and what the redevelopment actually owns in regards to, what's under redevelopment's name.
Yeah.
So we have an idea. If
Is
there
that
a
in the data
comprehensive
portal
list.
for the city of Bloomington? If you wanted to look up what the RDC owns, could you look that up readily?
You could look it up. So the easiest way, the most comprehensive way would be to use the county's GIS system.
I was
so
going
you
to
could
ask,
look
that
for.
was my other thought. Yeah.
I will just as a way of, there are two ways that the RDC is entered as owners of property. So sometimes it's the Bloomington Redevelopment Commission, and then per statute there is a way of the commission could also own property in the name of the department, the redevelopment department. So the Bloomington Redevelopment Department. So you'll see both ways sometimes noted in the GIS system. But I'm happy to prepare a list. There's properties that I think you all are aware of that we talk about on a regular basis, but there are some others that you're probably not aware of that were part of either right-of-way acquisition. So we've talked about that on Cottage Grove a little bit. There's still pieces of right-of-way that you all own. There's parts of other developments that became common spaces that actually are technically still in the RDC name that you all still own, just in general, but they're fairly contained.
Is there a
in
way to
small
clean up
percentage.
some of that?
So we've kind of been doing that with the Cottage Grove situation where that was probably obtained as to the best we can, we have discerned. That was obtained about 40 years ago or a little bit more for a project that never ended up coming to fruition. So the way we've tried to, I don't know about cleaning it up, but the way we've tried to reintegrate that is we've offered those for purchase to contiguous landowners. We had one landowner take us up on that, which enables them at that particular area to subdivide their parcels. And that's been advantageous to also Habitat for Humanity has utilized that process in that neighborhood. And so those are the kind of opportunities we're looking for. We want to be strategic. We want to make sure that it aligns with your mission still. We're not just getting rid of property to get rid of property.
Right, that it follows what we need to be done as a community. Without, just curious, get a list, that'd be great.
Yep.
One other question in regards to when we're deeming the 444 account, which is a non-TIF fund when collected rents is deposited.
Yeah.
Is that where we've got the buildings that are owned by redevelopment? Is there other allocated dollars that go into the 444 account, or is it specifically rental deposits that come to the redevelopment?
I don't want to misspeak. So it is definitely where the rents are deposited. So the idea is if you have property that you're renting out, it's kind of self-sustaining and paying for that. There's been a budget that's carried over from year to year. So I'd want to just consult with Jeff Underwood to make sure that I'm not speaking out of school about the historical places where we've obtained that money. But it's not like we just move TIF money over. It has to be come from a very particular source.
Oh, no, I didn't expect you to move, that you were moving TIF in any capacity. The main objective was, is there going to be enough money to do the maintenance that we need at the current budget amount we
Yes.
put?
Yeah, there's enough in the account to cover this amount of maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Are there any other questions from commissioners regarding Resolution 23-02? Any comment from the public? Not hearing any. I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 23-02.
Sarah Bowerly Bansman, I move to approve Resolution 23-02.
Deb Hutton, a second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next item of business is Resolution 23-03, approval of funding for appraisals for property within the allocation areas for the purpose of possible acquisition and redevelopment. Who'd like to speak to this?
So I could also speak to this. So this is another one of those annual resolutions. I will just point out that there's an increase this year to the amount in this particular resolution. So last year, you all had approved about $25,000 as a cap money, and that was enough for last year, except for a couple of one-offs that we had to specifically approve outside of that particular budget. However, this year we have doubled that to $50,000, and there's a very specific reason why. So the reason why is Hopewell. So we are now moving, so we had the demolition at Phase 1 East. We are now anticipating moving toward the offering those for development in this calendar year, which means that we need to obtain updated appraisals for those properties. There are a significant number of parcels on those properties. We anticipate that being a little bit expensive. And so we wanted to leave a little bit of a cushion here. Now, you all still will receive reports for those specific individual appraisals. We'll do that in executive session since it'll be part of the negotiations for the sale of that particular property or property transaction. But this would allow us to pay for those appraisals up front and get those going. We anticipate some of the bills for the Hopewell appraisals, which have already begun, to come in this calendar year. So this would help cover some of those.
So an overall encompassing budget to take care of appraisals without having to come back each time. You're going to come back each time to have that discussion on each parcel.
For each presentation of the appraisals and what they are and the details that we'll talk about.
This
yeah.
just gives us a budgetary item to work with.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, any other questions regarding resolution 23-03? Any public comment? Not hearing any. I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-03.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next item is resolution 23-04, approval of project review and approval form for the Regional Economic Acceleration and Development Initiative, Ready Grant for Hopewell. Who'd like to speak to us about this?
Speak to that, Madam President. As you all know, we are working on funds, or we are developing them. I'm sorry, I'm trying to share a screen here. So we are working on redeveloping the Hopewell site, and as part of that, different irons in the fire with housing development, infrastructure funding. I also want to, while I'm thinking of it, mention Patrick Durkis from Engineering's on here too, who is helping us with this. So in the interest of funding the necessary infrastructure at the site, which you'll see on this map up here, that which has a red dot is unfunded infrastructure. That which is coded in blue is funded infrastructure. If you're looking to orient yourself, the square around number 4, this is the parking garage right here, okay, on the site. In the fall of this year, we applied for a READY grant. As you know, the READY program, which is funded through the rescue plan, as was indicated in the resolution. We applied for a READY grant to fund the construction of a new section of Jackson Street, which would go from First Street to University Avenue right here. So this section, which is in the oval, that is just west of the core building. The core building is right about here at number 5. And so, as we've indicated here before, and you'll hear more this year, the goal for the core building is to redevelop it into affordable housing. The number of targeted units for this group of parcels 4, 5, and 6, is about 400, which is what is in the master plan. So the goal of the grant was to ask for funds to build infrastructure that would be in support of housing. And so that's this construction, this 300 or so foot section of Jackson Street would support the housing on these adjacent parcels, as you know. We applied for $1,999,920. We have gotten preliminary good news back that we are looking at awarding $1.8 million, which will fund the Jackson Street section. The residual there, we count on being a contingency. There are some side streets or side alleys and things like that we're working with the developer on that would hopefully make up the difference. So what we're asking tonight, there was a match component to the grant. And so what we did was pulled the match component, let me say, is not match funds to pay for this construction, but it's sort of what is the skin in the game here? What has been the investment thus far from the community? The READY program, there's a very strong component of local investment. There's the state is putting in this much. What's the skin in the game for the local government? So as you'll see in the project review form that Larry put together, we have about $6 million in match. That largely includes the construction of First Street, or the reconstruction of First Street, which is already funded through the state and federal grant, in addition to some other things that we included in the program. On the last page of your packet, page 15, it lays out the whole budget for the grant program, and you'll see several $1 million of match, and the core building construction project is a piece of that as well. So we're looking at what is the skin in the game here, if you will, for the rest of the project. We don't yet know what the other developments look like. We're just not there yet, so I'm not able to include that match. But Larry put together a resolution here that indicates the match. What we're asking you to do tonight is sort of acknowledging that match was included. It's like I said, there's the next step of approval is to go through the state approvals. It's been approved locally here, but needs to go through some more approvals. So this is sort of a blessing, if you will, that we use the project review form. Larry, if you characterize it any other way, chime in. But this is, again, not money we're asking you to chip in as much as understanding and recognizing that we acknowledge that here's what we've put in thus far through other community investments and for the Hopewell project. Clearly, there's a $25 million commitment from the city on TIF, but that doesn't impact. We couldn't use all of that for a lot of reasons, but what is most directly impactful of Jackson Street? So that which is around Jackson Street, which is why we kind of divided the match out like we did. So don't include all of it.
That's the same reason why there's also a separate project review and approval form. We did this in the past for other federal grants just to keep it nice and tidy. This is for this type of grant. Some of these funds obviously are covered on the Hopewell, the broader Hopewell project review and approval form. So you're not, just to be clear, you're not approving double the funds or theoretically double the funds. We're just really trying to have this nice and tidy so that John can present it to Ready and the state and just say, here's what we are putting into this project. Here's where your Ready grants will fit, and this is the project it's for. And it does exclude some of the extraneous stuff that we're not using for match. So the Phase 1 East items that you'll normally see during a Hopewell approval that we're bringing you back for any specific approval of funds.
So may I ask a clarifying question? Mm-hmm. So from what you said, it sounds as if you can't say, $25 million for the whole Hopewell project. It has to be related to Jackson Street. Yeah. Therefore, say something on Morton or the 1, 2, 3 parcels on Hopewell East infrastructure, they don't really impact Jackson at all.
Right.
Therefore, more first and second or.
Yeah, and we want to be mindful of, kind of Larry said, we don't want to double count things and sort of go too far in where there was a match ratio, but they want to see, we included the construction.
They want stuff just close by and
yeah, like
really.
what's going to be most impacted by that and what can you count as match there. So
thank you.
That's correct.
Based on what you said earlier, John, is $6 million is the amount we're allocating towards that we would consider our local match?
It's a piece of it. So it's the match, I want to make sure I'm distinct, and some match can be, you need, the whole project is $2 million, where the grant's $400,000. You've got to come up with 1.6 to complete the project. The grant will fund all of the Jackson Street construction. It's just sort of what else are we doing to show that the community is investing in this project, as we want to see the whole project go. Obviously, the infrastructure can't, the core building can't be in service without infrastructure, so we're counting that projected budget as a match. And it's sort of, I just want to make sure I'm distinguishing that you're correct, Randy. It's just we're not using, not asking for money to go into the construction of Jackson Street. That will be funded by the grant. It's just what else are we doing out there that says, oh, here's additional money, investment that the community is making to get this housing developed. So that's why the core building's counting, First Street's being counted as well. So
okay.
I think the answer to your question is yes.
And we're saying $6 million match, but the match is $5 million, just over $5 million.
Excuse me.
So altogether, the project's about $7 million. So counting the $2 million already, it's about
And
$5
what
million.
we're already putting in as an overall basis that we break out of the 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I have one last question, because the already funded infrastructure, which is First Street, Second Street, and then our red dots, is the large blue portion at Section 2 in there? Is that our main walkway? It says
That's the
it's a-
greenway.
That's the
That's the
greenway.
green. Okay, I wanted to clarify that, just to verify. I assumed, but didn't want to make an assumption.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on resolution 23-04? Any comment from the public?
I had a question, actually.
ahead.
I just was trying to clarify in terms of what that commitment is. Is it the money that's committed for the core project, or is it broader than that in terms of what housing is being underwritten by the local match?
The match, what's included in the budget is basically the current pro forma
Okay.
of the core building construction. That's.
I mean, I
what
saw
we
that
need
in
to
there,
be
but
done.
when I was looking at it, I didn't understand what you just described in terms of
Yeah.
that it's not specifically for the infrastructure on the Jackson Street, it's more for the surrounding.
That's right.
So I understand that better now, and now that I understand that,
Yeah.
I have to look back at the budget and
And-
put two and two together.
And this pro forma, to your point, this pro forma includes as if the project received tax credits, which we don't know
I see.
yet.
Okay.
So that was a discussion of, well, you don't know you've gotten tax credits yet, but they're okay with that, and they understand this is a good, if this project, as we've projected it, if this is the project we use, it has a good chance of getting tax credits, and so they were willing to accept that, but the pro forma includes as if it does,
Okay.
so.
Is there a reason that the actual proposal's not included and as an exhibit in this part of the packet? I mean, just the pro forma is, which is
Sure.
fine, but it seemed like the proposal might have added a little bit more depth.
The grant proposal itself?
Yeah.
No, I think just we're just trying to be efficient, so we can send that to you if you'd like.
Okay. Is
so-
it available somewhere? I was looking around online and I
It's not
found-
available online, but I can send you the word. It was a portal, and so I had
Oh.
to download it out of the portal, but I can send you
Okay, I
that.
was looking at the States Ready site and I saw stuff from earlier in 2021 and it was for
Yeah.
regional stuff and anyways.
Yeah, it's not there yet. It has to go to the IEDC. still,
Okay, well,
and so
because
it
it's still
hasn't-
under review, it's only preliminary
Right,
approval, right?
exactly.
So, okay.
So-
And what's the deadline for their review or when do they announce that?
It's kind of hard to tell. I think that we're in the weeks when everything gets uploaded into the portal for review by the state's financial consultant and through the IEDC. I've been told weeks of approval, not any more
Okay.
than that. So I want to be
Okay,
mindful
because
of.
the LIHTC should be announced at the end of February, right?
No, it hasn't gone in for
Oh.
application yet. It won't be announced.
Okay, so
it
application
won't go
deadline's
until
February
July.
and then won't be announced till the summer.
Application actually is July.
Oh, okay, maybe it's gotten,
Yeah, and
a
then
different
we'd
cycle
find
than
out
I'm
theoretically,
remembering.
we would find out in November of this year if
okay.
it was successful.
Thanks.
So,
No, I was remembering a different cycle. Thanks.
Yeah.
As we look through this LIHTC, things calculating on the 4% or 9%?
9%.
Okay. If we don't get the 9%, will it go?
Will it go? It's going to be tough.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right, any other questions on resolution 23-04? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Casty, I'll make a motion to approve.
And Sarah Bauer Dansman, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, resolution passes. Moving on, next item of business is any business or general discussion for the group tonight? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.